Welcome to Jesus School. Today we'll be in Mark chapter 11, verses 20 through 25. This is the 50th teaching of Jesus School that we started last December, and we're at a transition time. This is the last time you're going to see this artwork. This is the last time you'll see that screen up there, because we're going to start a new series on the 19th. It's still going to be Jesus School, but it's going to be taking a new direction. I'll give you a hint. There's going to be a lot less tech. The Lord wants black screens up during this next part of the series of teaching. We're going to be teaching on Spirit-filled Jesus. Jesus filled with the Spirit, Jesus giving the Spirit, and then the works that Jesus did as the template for spiritual gifts. So I'm super excited about it. The Lord has directed us to do it. It's going to be a good first quarter. Maybe it'll bleed into the second quarter of 2025. There's going to be a lot of wonderful fruit. But this is kind of the end of season 1 of Jesus School. 50 parts. That's all. It's too much for season 1, isn't it, Matthew? You're like, no, you can't have 50 parts in season 1. I have never been more convinced that what I'm teaching is exactly what the Lord wants taught on this particular day, as I am today's teaching. I started to think about this week, knowing that it would be the Sunday that we start the 72-hour prayer time. I started thinking about this week about 6 to 8 weeks ago, and the Lord told me what I should teach on this day, which is this text, and then he confirmed it with several signs that were undeniable, and so I'm so excited. I don't know if I'm going to make every application that needs to be made. I think the Lord is going to make applications to our hearts as needed, but I know we are right where the Lord wants us to be in this text, on this day, in this moment, with these people sitting in these chairs. We're going to have a wonderful time of ministry afterwards that follows this, and then at the end of that, we are going to have a special time of laying on of hands. Jonas and possibly Miss Eleanor and somebody else are just going to lay hands on Joshua, because Joshua is going back to school tomorrow, to Bible school, and then he's going on a missions trip in March to Germany. So we'll hear some about that, and then we'll lay hands and commission him this morning. That'll be at the end of the service. So the snow is falling. Are you ready for Jesus School? Here we go. Mark 11, verse 20 through 25. Let's give some context real quick for the chapter that we're in, and specifically the teaching that we're going to approach here. So these 3 pictures walk us through Mark 11, 12 through 25. Our teaching is going to be 20 through 25, but a little bit broader out to give us some context. This is 2 days of Passion Week. You notice I have up there Monday a.m., Monday p.m., Tuesday a.m. By Friday a.m. of this week, by Friday a.m., Jesus will be on the cross. He'll be hung on the cross about 9 o'clock in the morning, and he'll be there until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. 6 hours, one Friday, changed the world. Okay, I think Max Lucado said that. I'm sure he did, but it's a great line. So that's Friday. This is Monday and Tuesday, what we're talking about. So this is Passion Week. On Monday morning, of course, the day before, the Sunday was a very famous Sunday called Palm Sunday. On Monday morning, Jesus is on his way to the temple to do some teaching and to do some cleaning house, and he passes by a fig tree. He passes by a fig tree. It looks something like that. And he's got his entourage, his 12 with him. So Jesus and the 12 walking to the temple. They pass by a fig tree. Is it that fig tree? No, it's just a random Google image of a fig tree, all right? He walks up, and it's early spring, and it's not the time for fig trees to have figs yet, okay? But it is full of leaves. So it looks beautiful, but it has no fruit. And Jesus walks up to it, and he curses it. He says, "May no one ever eat from your fruit again." He curses a fig tree. Uncharacteristic for Jesus. Only time he ever did something like this. Only time his words ever brought death was when he spoke to this tree. Every other time, his words brought life to people. But he wanted to use this tree as an example for the nation of Israel. The apostles caught this, they understood this, and anybody who's ever read the Old Testament knows that Israel is compared to a fig tree over and over in the Old Testament. So Jesus is seeing a picture here, a parable of the nation of Israel. Oh, you look like you're in full bloom. You got leaves everywhere. And from afar, people would think that you're fruitful. But under close inspection, when God comes near, he sees there's no fruit on this tree. And so as a prophetic act, he cursed the tree. Nothing happened in the moment. It was just Jesus cursing a tree. And he's like, all right, guys, let's go. And they kept walking on. Tree looked the same. They make their way to the temple. He goes into the temple and he says, my Father's house shall be called a house of prayer, but you've made it a den of thieves. And he throws over the money changers' tables and he releases the doves and he won't let anybody come in who's wanting to sell, and he cleans God's house. Let's go. Then he goes back to Bethany, goes back to bed. The next morning, Tuesday morning now, he's going back into the temple. I affectionately refer to this Tuesday as Teaching Tuesday in Passion Week. I have a name for every day of Passion Week. This is Teaching Tuesday. Oh, Monday is Furious Monday, and this is Teaching Tuesday. And so on Teaching Tuesday, as they are traveling, again, back to Jerusalem, they pass by the same tree. They're taking the same route, and Peter goes, oh, the tree you spoke against yesterday. Look at it. And it looks something like that, right? At least that's the way the text makes it seem. From Monday morning to Tuesday, the only thing that happened was the Son of God stood in front of it and spoke some words and cursed it as a prophetic act. That's where we are. Now let's pick up to Peter saying, oh, the tree. Here we go. Mark 11:20. As they passed by in the morning, they saw the fig tree withered away to its roots. And Peter remembered and said to him, Rabbi, look, the fig tree that you cursed has withered. Jesus answered them, have faith in God. Truly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, they're standing on the Mount of Olives, whoever says to this mountain, be taken up and thrown into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says will come to pass, it will be done for him or her. Gender inclusive. Therefore, I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. And whenever you stand praying, forgive if you have anything against anyone, so that your Father also, who is in heaven, may forgive you your trespasses. All right, so we're going to walk through about 5 different lines in this text. And let's see what the Lord has for us this morning. First, his response. They said, oh, the tree. And his response is, have faith in God. Now, if I could elaborate, I think what Jesus is saying here is he's saying, I did this because I exercised faith in God. How did this tree wither? Through my faith in God. Have faith in God. That's how this happened. Not faith in faith, not faith in self, faith in God. Oftentimes throughout the scriptures, especially throughout the Gospels, you'll see Jesus say, only believe, or just have faith. And sometimes he leaves off the in God prepositional phrase. So you'll see a text, it'll just say, Jesus says, only believe, and it will happen. What you should always know about Jesus is that in God is always understood. You can just go ahead and put it right in there, right? Like an understood prepositional phrase every time Jesus affirms faith or affirms belief or calls people to trust. It's never faith in faith. It's never faith in self. Believe in yourself. Jesus doesn't do that. He doesn't say believe in yourself. What's that? The Wiz, 1978, Diana Ross. Believe in yourself. No, Jesus isn't saying believe in yourself or believe in belief or believe in faith. He's always saying believe in God. Sometimes he actually verbalizes it, but every time it's understood. Have faith in God. So this isn't necessarily a teaching on faith. It's a teaching on faith in God. What is faith in God? Let's see if we can have a definition. Faith in God, this is kind of an explanation more than a definition. Faith in God is taking him at his word, trusting that he is good, faithful, and all-powerful. Have faith in God. Take God at his word, trusting that he is good, faithful, and all-powerful. have faith in God. So here's how you should imagine Jesus standing in front of this tree, exercising faith in God. Jesus is standing in front of this tree, and we know that he did something here and said something here, right? He did something in cursing. He said something, well, because you verbalize a curse. And we know from John chapter 5 and John chapter 12, let me give you the exact reference. John 5:19, John 12:49. Jesus said, I only say what I hear the Father saying. I only do what I hear the Father doing. So you take those two verses into this scenario. Jesus is standing in front of a tree, and the Father says, curse it. Curse the tree as a prophetic act. And all Jesus has to do is obey. He has to have faith in God, to take him at his word, to do what the Father's telling him to do, trusting that an all-powerful God could bring his curse to fruition and could wither the tree. And so Jesus, full of faith in God, simply says, may you be cursed, and may no one ever eat of your fruit again. May no one ever eat of your fruit again. Jesus exercising faith in God. It's not any more complicated than that, but there's a lot there. In that moment, standing in front of the tree, he's aligned with the Father's heart. He's connected to the Father's mind and the Father's purposes for Israel and for these 12. The Father wants these 12 to see a memorable act so they can learn something about prayer and faith. So the Father's heart is for these 12, and Jesus is aligned with the Father's heart for the 12. The Father's heart is for the nation. Jesus is aligned with the Father's heart and purposes for the nation. And in that moment, he receives a word from the Father, and he acts. And he exercises faith in God. In the course of Jesus' ministering, he goes out of his way time and time and time again. You can't get through the Gospels without stumbling over it over and over and over and over, like Legos left in the living room, right? You can't hardly, just step after step after step. As you walk with Jesus through Galilee, as he's ministering to people, you constantly see this thing where he's saying, you're healed not because of me, you're healed because of your faith. It's your faith that healed you. He doesn't take the credit and say, be encouraged, daughter. I have healed you. No. Over and over and over, he says, be encouraged, daughter. Your faith healed you. Why is that encouraging? Because Jesus is going to be gone soon, but their faith in God won't be gone soon. If you can be convinced that you're healed in this moment because your faith in God, then when I'm gone, when the healer's gone, then you'll be able to continue to get healing for your next malady as you walk through this broken world, right? You'll be able to get healed for the next one because all you have to do is exercise faith in God. Let me give you an example of all of these. The woman with the issue of blood comes to Jesus after suffering for 12 years in Matthew 9. And he says, take heart, daughter, your faith has made you well. Your faith has made you well. Oh, but I touched the hem of your garment. By faith, it was the faith act, not the touching of my garment. It was the faith that led to the touching of the garment that healed you. Faith in God. Your faith in God has made you well. Remember, it's always understood. The centurion servant in Matthew chapter number 8, let it be done just as you believed it would. Just as you believed it would. He wants to point to his belief. Belief and faith are the exact same Greek word in the New Testament. There's no different Greek word. Believe, faith, and trust are all come from the exact same Greek word, pistis. Third, the Canaanite woman's daughter who is demonized. This is the one where Jesus says the thing about the dogs under the table. I always kind of scratch my head at. He says to her, woman, you have great faith in God. You have great faith. Your request is granted. To the blind men who are following Jesus, he says, after he touches them, according to your faith in God, let it be done for you. According to your faith, let it be done to you. The 10 lepers, when he heals the 10 lepers and only one of them return, and he says, where are the 9? To the 10 lepers, he says, rise and go. Your faith has made you well. To blind Bartimaeus, the beggar, he says, go, Bartimaeus, your faith in God has healed you, your faith. And to the sinful woman who anointed Jesus' feet in Luke 7, he says, woman, your faith has saved you, sozoed you. Go in peace. He is so deliberate. And there's more than this, but this filled up the slide. He's so deliberate about saying, it's faith. It's your faith in God that did this. Faith in God. Have faith in God. Next line. Truly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, now he's going to say something here that sounds ridiculous. And that's the point. He's a rabbi, and he's using the most ludicrous thing you could possibly imagine to make a point. He's choosing something that's ridiculous, like taking a mountain and moving it to another place in another part of the city. That's a crazy thing. Why would you ever need that? I don't know. I guess we could imagine a scenario where you would need to move a mountain, but probably not. Probably, Paul, you'll go through every day of your life and you'll never one time think, I need to move a mountain. You just won't, right? And so the idea is he's choosing something outlandish. Whoever says to this mountain, be taken up and thrown into the sea. Okay. He's talking about the impossible. Jesus not only emphasized faith in God throughout his ministry, but he also worked time and time again to try to get regular human beings like you and I to believe that nothing is impossible with God. Nothing is impossible. Moving a mountain and planting it into the sea, that's impossible. Nothing is impossible. Even that. Nothing is impossible. So he kind of did it at three different levels. Number one, he convinced people over and over and over, and tried to convince people through his teaching that nothing is impossible with God. Nothing is impossible with God. Oh, things are impossible, not when God is involved, not with God. Okay? Then he would say it this way also, all things are possible with God. Nothing is impossible with God. All things are possible with God. And then he would say it this way, nothing is impossible to the one who has faith in God. Nothing is impossible for him. All things are possible for him, and all things are possible for you when you are with God. A couple of verses just to refresh your memory on all the ways he said this. Mark 9, Jesus comes down from the Mount of Transfiguration with Peter, James, and John. They just saw Moses and Elijah at the top of the mountain and heard the Father's voice say, "This is my son, listen to him." It was amazing. They walk down the mountain and they see a scrum. And it's a whole bunch of people all together. And there's a demonized boy who's having seizures, he can't be contained by grown men. He's heavily demonized. And here's Bartholomew, and here's Andrew, and here's others, Matthew. And they're trying to cast the demon out, and the demon's just laughing at them. Stink. This worked on our circuit when we went out earlier. And it's not working. Hey, Jesus, good thing you're here. We can't get this demon to leave this boy. And then the dad of the little boy runs up to Jesus and he says, finally, you're here. Your guys couldn't do this. Your guys are powerless against the demon in my boy. But now you're here, Jesus. If you can you help? If you can? And Jesus says, if you can, all things are possible for the one who believes. He says, so the dad says, if you can do anything, have compassion on us. If you can, Jesus. And Jesus says, no, if you can. Retorts right back. It's quite an exchange to a desperate father, right? If you can, Jesus said, if you can. All things are possible for the one who believes in God. All things are possible for the one who believes. You may have another son someday who's heavily demonized, and I won't be here. But you will still have faith in God. You can still have faith in God for that. All things are possible for the one who believes. Then he turns to the 9 who couldn't cast the demon out, and he says, boys, where's your faith? Where's your faith in God? If you have faith like a grain of a mustard seed, Bartholomew, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there. He apparently liked this. He used it several different times. Move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you, Bartholomew. This seems like an impossible situation with this boy that's heavily demonized. It's not impossible with faith in God. All things are possible, Bartholomew. All things are possible. I know I chose 2 different chapters there. It's the same story, believe me, if you wanted to follow it. Here's another one. Let's see, this is, a rich man. Rich man came to Jesus, and Jesus said, I tell you what, here's the test of your faith. Sell everything you have and then come follow me. And he goes, I have too many riches, I can't do that. And he walks away from Jesus, and he doesn't follow Jesus. And Jesus says, it's hard for a rich man to be saved. It's hard for a rich man to follow the path of Christ. And Peter said, well, who can be saved? Jesus looked at him and said, with man, this is impossible. But with God, all things are possible. Whether it comes to casting out a demon or whether it comes to an unlikely person repenting and getting saved. Guys, don't you believe that all things are possible? Stop talking like people who believe that things are impossible. That's not how Christians talk, Dustin. Christians don't say that's impossible. That's an unchristian thing to do. There are a list of unchristian things to do, and typically, smoking, drinking, fistfights, and dirty talk. If you grew up in Sunday school, you know the song, right? Smoking, drinking, fistfights, dirty talk, talking about things that are impossible. Calling things impossible is not something that Christians do. So stop it. All things are possible for the one who believes. With God, all things are possible. Gabriel comes, the messenger of heaven. He comes to Mary, and he says, Mary, Elizabeth, your aunt, is going to have a baby. I know she has a dead womb, but she's going to have a baby. And here's apparently the motto of heaven, for nothing will be impossible with God. Nothing will be impossible with God. Mary heard it. Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, Thursday night, late in the night, he's already had the Last Supper. He's about to be arrested by Judas within a matter of like an hour. Judas is going to come and betray him with a kiss. And Jesus, in his final prayer time with the Father, he says, Father, and how does he start the prayer? All things are possible for you. This seems to be something that we should say in prayer. This is a great way to start your prayers. I love hearing Matthew and Ashley pray over this past year. Several times I've asked them to pray, and I'll say, hey, Matthew or Ashley, could you pray? And they'll say, our Father in heaven, may your name be kept holy. And there's this deep joy that wells up within me because they're praying like Jesus. And I think they've incorporated that maybe some more this year because of our focus on the model prayer. That's how Jesus prays. Yes, come on. That's how we should pray. Right? And this is how Jesus prays too, especially when looking at a seemingly impossible situation. Like one man dying for the sins of the whole world. This seems to be an impossible thing for one man to be able to do, to bear the full wrath of God for humanity in 6 hours on one Friday. It seems like. But Father, all things are possible for you. What a great way to start your prayers. And then lastly, Jesus talked about forgiving repeat offenders. He says, some of you are going to live with very difficult people. Some of you are going to have very difficult people in your life. I'm so sorry. But even if they offend you 7 times a day and turn to you and say, I'm sorry, 7 times a day, you have to forgive. You must forgive. You must live a life of forgiveness if you're going to be my follower. And the guy said, increase our faith. How can we live like that? We need more faith to live like that. Increase our faith. And the Lord said, if you had faith like a grain of a mustard seed, boys, he already said it again, he loves the mustard seed and he loves the mountain. If you had faith like a grain of a mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry tree, be uprooted and planted into the sea, and it would obey you. Nothing's impossible. Forgiving repeat offenders 7 times a day is not impossible with God, right? Nothing is impossible with God. All things are possible with God. Casting out generational demons, forgiving a repeat offender, opening a dead womb, choosing to love God over wealth, exercising power over nature, killing a fig tree with our words, moving mountains with our words, transplanting trees in the middle of the sea. All things are possible with God. Then he moves on and he says, but the person who has faith in God, who speaks to trees and moves mountains, make sure they do not have doubt in their heart, but they believe. So, seems to be that Jesus is saying here that some people will speak to mountains and the mountains won't move because they have doubt in their heart. They have doubt in their heart. Now remember, we're not overly complicating faith in God. Faith in God for Jesus was standing in front of a tree. The Father says speak, and he speaks. And he trusts that whatever the Father tells me to speak, I'm supposed to speak. And if I speak it, then his word will not return void. And so something's going to happen to this tree. I don't know exactly what it is. The Father didn't tell me that it would wither away to the roots. He just told me to curse the tree. So here I am cursing the tree, and I'll leave the rest to the Father. That's faith in God. Right? So we need to have that kind of heart posture, but not a doubting heart posture. Doubting heart postures will leave it to where when you speak to mountains, the mountains won't move. If you don't have faith or confidence in God, the mountain won't move. If you have a heart posture of disbelief, pessimism, and doubt, the mountain won't move. Now, for some of you who are naturally optimistic, raise your hand. If you're with me, my hand is raised. If you're a naturally optimistic person. Very good. This is going to come very easy for you just to believe beyond hope because you're just optimistic and I think it's possible, right? Some of you are naturally pessimistic, and that's not a sin. It's just the way that God has made you. When I hold up a donut, you see a hole, right? You see the hole in the donut instead of the edible part, and that's okay. It's just a way that God has made your eye to see, and it's very valuable in a community and in the kingdom of God. However, for you, this kind of bent towards pessimism will be something that you'll have to fight against, because that pessimism can actually just be another name for doubt. For doubt. I think as I was doing a study, I found that the Greek word for doubt shows up in another story in the book of Acts, in Acts 10:22, when the Spirit says to Peter, "Go downstairs, Peter, and follow the men that are looking for you." They're Cornelius's men. Follow the men who are looking for you, and do not hesitate. It's the same word there that we have here for doubt. Don't hesitate. Just go. And I was really instructed by this in my study this week. How many times do I hear from the Lord and I hesitate? Sometimes could that be wisdom? Sure. Oftentimes, is it just plain doubt? For me, it is. I would say 90% of the time when I'm hesitating, it's because I'm doubting. And so the Lord may speak something to me, and I get so in my head with, is this the Lord, or is this not? Or maybe I need 6 more witnesses to confirm that this is the Lord. And all of a sudden, now the moment passes, and that opportunity to express faith in God is gone. So we want to be people who are discerning. We like multiple signs, especially for important decisions. But when the Holy Spirit says to Josh, call him right now. Text that person right now. Say this to Joanna right now. Pick up Lucy, look her in the eyes, and say this. This is opportunities to partner with God, to have faith in God, and just to act. And the more our reflexes are to just act when we know that God has said something, the more mountains we'll see moved. The less we'll allow doubt to creep up in our heart. When I speak to a mountain and the mountain doesn't move, which that's happened for me many times. When I speak to a mountain and the mountain doesn't move, then I have to do some self-evaluation, don't I? Self-evaluation. Maybe there's spiritual resistance, and I need to call in backup, right? Maybe the mountain is cancer, or it's a broken relationship, or it's a financial miracle that we need, right? Whatever it is, the mountain that I need moved, right? If it's not moving, maybe I need to call in backup. Heck, Gabriel was fighting with the prince of Persia for 21 days, and guess what Gabriel did? He called in for backup. He's like, "Hey, Michael, can I get some help here? I got some spiritual resistance happening. I'm trying to get a message to Daniel, and I can't get it to him. Can I get some backup?" If Gabriel needed backup against spirits, how much more do we probably need backup against spirits? So if you have a mountain that's not moving, maybe you enlist the help of a friend. And you say, "Hey, come here. I've been praying about something for a while, and I'm getting nowhere. Would you partner with me? Let's Gabriel and Michael this together, and let's see if we can get a breakthrough." Another thing would be maybe I just need persistence. That's baked into all Christian prayers, persistence. And so be like the importunate woman and keep praying. Maybe you just need persistence, and then maybe God didn't speak, and you got it wrong. I know for me, this is the case for me many, many times. I speak to the mountain doesn't move, and after careful consideration later, I think, I actually don't think God actually said that. I think I was mistaken. And that's okay. We're allowed to make mistakes in this Christian life, None of us are going to do it perfectly. That's fine. Humble yourself, repent, and grow and learn. But don't doubt. The last two are quick. Therefore, I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, whatever you ask in prayer, it's a blank check. I love blank checks. Whatever you ask in prayer. But I just do want to focus in on this word ask here and just do a simple public service announcement for all of us, okay? This word ask. There is a notion in some charismatic circles that there is more faith and power in declaring, decreeing, and commanding than there is in petition. It's just a notion. Maybe you've never actually considered it before, but I'll tell you, it's there. It's this notion that if you ask, there's not as much faith. But if you command, decree, and declare, there's more faith and more power, and you're going to see more miracles. I think that this passage debunks that as fake news. Because the most decree, declare passage in the Bible, speak to the mountain and say, be removed from hence, right? And cast into the sea. Can you get more of a decree thing? And Jesus says we can pray like that, but then he says, okay, so here's the takeaway. When you're asking in prayer, get it? He goes right into petition. There's no difference between the decree and the petition when it comes to effectiveness in prayer, right? The Lord may lead you to do one or the other. Somebody that we know, that we love, may do one, may do the decree thing all the time and have a wonderful, fruitful prayer life. But that doesn't mean that that's how the whole church should be or that they discovered some secret sauce about prayer that nobody else has ever known. No. Jesus, the Gospels debunk that notion, okay? Asking in prayer in faith is just as effective and just as powerful as decreeing or declaring or commanding. So if I have Mark in front of me and Mark says I have a bad back, I can say, Father, would you bring Mark's back into alignment right now in the name of Jesus? That's a petition. Or I could say, I command Mark's back to come into alignment right now in the name of Jesus. That's a command. Father, bring his back into alignment, come into alignment. Either one can be equally as effective because it's not the words that we say, it's the faith in God. Did the Lord give me a word to pray for Mark? Then that faith in God will be what brings healing to Mark, not whether or not I petition or command, right? Paul said something I think that is worth noting here. He says, remind your church, Timothy. Paul says, Timothy, remind your church and charge them before God not to quarrel about words, which does no good, but only ruins the hearers. There's some quarreling about words or some elevating of specific language or words in the kingdom that oftentimes does nothing but ruin the hearers. And so I don't want to quarrel about words. Lastly, forgive if you have anything against anyone. All right, mountain movers, now, what should you do? Right before you pray that mountain-moving faith prayer, right before, do a quick heart check. Do you have anything against anyone? If so, before you move that mountain, forgive. How about Jesus to always bring it back to square one, right? Genius. He's looking at his 12. You guys are going to be mountain movers. Well, not you, Judas. The rest, looking at these 11, you guys are going to be mountain movers. But you're also going to be daily forgivers. The mountain movers are daily forgivers.